Hello, Percy Jackson Nation, and welcome back to another episode breakdown of the Percy Jackson series. So today we're going to be breaking down episode 3, and also, before I get into it, I want all of you to comment happy birthday, because it's my birthday today. I'm turning 24. Yes, it's true. They released the Percy Jackson show for my birthday. They did it so that episode 3 would come on my birthday. Very kind of them. The rumors are true, and I really appreciate it. But in all seriousness, we're going to break down and sort of talk about episode 3, what happened, my thoughts, etc., etc. And not to brag or anything, but the way that I got the best episode of the show so far on my birthday, once again, they did it for me, you guys. I'm serious. So this episode is called We Visit the Garden Gnome Emporium. Obviously, Medusa is going to be in this episode, so we'll get to her in a second. The episode starts out with Percy in the attic of the big house. He's going to talk to the Oracle. The Oracle is a creepy looking old lady. When I read the book in my head, anytime anybody mentioned the Oracle, I definitely pictured that lady from SpongeBob that's like, chocolates! I want chocolates! You know what I'm talking about? The little like raisin lady that sits in the wheelchair. I pictured her. And they got the idea right. Percy is super funny when he's in the attic. He says hi to the Oracle and his voice cracks. Very funny. Calls her a Halloween decoration, and then she breathes and all the smoke comes out of her mouth, and then it's Gabe. It's Gabe. Gabe gives Percy his quest. So then we go to, I think it's called like the choosing ceremony or something. Percy has to pick the 2 people to go on this quest with him. Before Chiron can even finish saying his sentence, Percy says Annabeth's name, which at first is kind of sweet until later in the episode we figure out why he said Annabeth's name. And then he also picks Grover. We see Percy go to Grover to tell him that he picked him, and Grover's like shoveling Pegasus poop. And he's talking to a black Pegasus. Once again, I'm not sure if that's Blackjack. It could be, and it probably is, but we don't know for sure. But let's just assume it's Blackjack. So another little Blackjack cameo. Percy tells Grover that he picked him for the quest. He tells Grover that he trusts him, and that's all that's important. Grover, God bless his heart, goes, I'm gonna pack the best snacks. Love him. Percy's packing his stuff up in his cabin. Luke comes in and gives him the flying shoes. I like him giving him the shoes in the cabin way more than how they do it in the book, where it's like very last minute. They're about to leave the borders of Camp Half-Blood, and Luke's like, wait, I have something for you, Percy, and he gives it to him there. I like that it's just the 2 of them. It feels a lot more intimate between their characters, and I feel like it just grows their character relationship even more. The flying shoes look so cool. They're red high tops like they are in the book, and the way that the wings are the laces is really, really, really cool. Like, really fantastic design. I was like in awe. Percy and Luke talk for a little bit, growing their whole mentor relationship even further. Percy talks about how he almost chose Luke, and then he didn't. We go to the edge of Camp Half-Blood, and we see Annabeth at Thalia's tree. So sad. She like touches it, and she's very sad. Percy and Grover are behind her talking about it. Percy's like, man, she's really gonna miss that tree, huh? Grover sort of explains what happened to Thalia, how Zeus saved Thalia by turning her into a tree. We get a moment of Percy once again sort of questioning the gods and how they work, and being like, you're telling me Zeus, the most powerful god ever, his only plan to save his daughter was turning her into a tree? Okay, weird champ. And he just doesn't take it really seriously. That upsets Annabeth. Annabeth's defending Thalia. She's like, she was the strongest person I knew. She met a hero's fate. And then Percy, God bless him, says she met a pinecone's fate. Percy, read the room. Then they leave for their quest. Annabeth leading, of course. Percy's like, does she think she's in charge? And Grover's like, who did you think was going to be in charge? Very funny. The trio has such fantastic chemistry together. I can't praise them enough. I really can't. I really like the music when they leave camp. It kind of gives like Lord of the Rings vibes a little bit. And I thought it was really beautiful music. They get to the bus station. Argus is not in the show, which doesn't really bother me. They get to the bus station. They get on a bus. Percy's like, why are we sitting back here? And Annabeth's like, we're soldiers on a mission, not a vacation. I love how throughout all these episodes so far, Grover just kind of keeps assuming that Percy's in the know of things when just no one tells Percy anything, so Grover always has to be the one to explain things to him. Percy and Annabeth start arguing about who's in charge and all that stuff, and you just hear Grover start to clap, and then he starts singing. He starts singing this song called Consensus, and it's so funny because it's so awkward. Grover is just constantly trying to ease the tension between Percy and Annabeth, and it's just such a good dynamic between the three of them. It's very, very entertaining. Annabeth goes and she gets snacks and she comes back onto the bus, and we get to see something that again is outside of Percy Jackson's perspective. Annabeth has her hat on and she goes and sits behind Alecto, Mrs. Dodds, if you will, and she's talking to her, and that's not something that we've ever seen her do. It's something that Percy doesn't know about, but we as the audience get to know about it. Alecto was one of the Furies that was chasing Luke and Annabeth and Thalia when they were arriving at camp, and Thalia catches a whole bunch of strays in this episode. First, Percy says that she meets a pine cone's fate, and then Alecto is like, maybe if Thalia was better at her job, there wouldn't be birds nesting in her right now. The Thalia disrespect is just crazy and off the charts. The woman that plays Alecto, very intimidating. All of the monsters in the show have a very intimidating presence, which is impressive. A lot of times when I watch things, I can tell in a scene that I'm supposed to feel intimidated and I'm supposed to feel scared, but like I don't, because I'm not really convinced by the actor. But in this show, anytime someone that's a monster or a villain is talking, I do feel intimidated. I do feel like stressed out, even though I'm not a part of it. Alecto calls Annabeth the pride of Athena's offspring. That's my girl. As a daughter of Athena myself, that's my girl. Annabeth goes to the back of the bus. She's like, guys, we gotta go. They're here. She kills one of Alecto's sisters with her dagger. Now the trio's off the bus and they're making their way through the woods. Once again, Grover's trying to ease the tension between Annabeth and Percy. But it's not just nonsense. He's talking about his Uncle Ferdinand, which is something that comes back up later in the episode. Again, we have Percy not really understanding how the gods work and how the relationship between the gods and the demigods works. Because he turns to Annabeth and he's like, let's just call your mom. Let's just call Athena and ask her to help us. And Annabeth's like, Grover, can you explain to your friend how this all works? We get the reveal that Grover was the protector of Annabeth and Luke and Thalia. That's a big deal. We know the part of the prophecy where it says that someone he calls friend will betray him. So we know that that's in the back of Percy's mind, but his friends don't know that and nobody else knows that, at least not yet. So we know that Percy's kind of just looking for betrayal. Like he's just expecting it. Then they arrive at Auntie M's, and I like how they do this in the show more than they do in the book. In the book, they don't really pick up on the fact that Auntie M has anything to do with Medusa. They don't really put two and two together until they're in the diner and like have been talking to her for a while. But in the show, the minute they pull up, Annabeth's like, Auntie M, a bunch of things turn to stone. Obviously, it's Medusa. And so what makes them go into Auntie M's is Alecto is behind them. So their options are stay out here with Alecto, and Alecto's gonna rip you in half, or come on into Auntie M's and I'll give you some food. So they have that little dilemma. Annabeth is extremely against Medusa, obviously because she's a child of Athena, so that makes sense. Percy, on the other hand, isn't all that against Medusa, and I talked about this in my episode review of episodes 1 and 2. Sally has a line that she says to Percy in one of the flashbacks at the very beginning of episode 1. Not everybody who looks like a hero is a hero, and not everybody who looks like a monster is a monster. And when she's recounting the story of Perseus and Medusa or whatever, she's like, what makes you think Medusa is a monster? This sets up Percy not being so quick to judge Medusa, not being so quick to be like, oh, she is a monster. He kind of is like, whenever my mom told me the story of Medusa, she never talked about her like she was a monster, and I trust my mom, so I'm gonna go get some food. So that is what causes the trio to go into Auntie M's. I love the Medusa scene in the show. I think it's way better than how they do it in the book. I'm so sorry not to be one of those people, but I think it's just better. The way that they know it's Medusa the whole time they're in there adds so much tension to the scene. Jessica Parker Kennedy as Medusa, fantastic. She's so intimidating and you can't even see her eyes, which I think is extremely impressive. And so she's intimidating, but she's also able to make us feel a little empathetic for her. And something I like that they do in the show, they don't really do in the book, is they kind of get into the history of Medusa a little bit more, and they explain sort of the backstory of her when it comes to her with Athena and her with Poseidon. The Medusa's story is different depending on where you're reading it from, depending on who's telling it. But the gist of the story is that like Medusa was a priestess in Athena's temple. Like she worshipped Athena, she loved Athena. And depending on what story you read, Poseidon came into Athena's temple and seduced Medusa. Some stories are a little bit more dark and graphic than that. We're just going to talk about the less dark one. the story is, Poseidon comes in, seduces Medusa, and they do it. Athena feels disrespect. And depending on who you ask, Athena cursed Medusa with snakes on her head so that no man could ever fall in love with her. Or Athena blessed Medusa with the snakes on her head so that no man could ever trick her or deceit her again. Depends on who you ask. So it's very interesting, sort of opinionated story behind Medusa, and they get into that. Medusa talks about her snakes as a gift from the gods so that she could never be bullied again. Annabeth is like, it's not a gift, it's a curse. My mom cursed you for what you did. It's not a gift. So I find it very interesting that they bring that up and they show like the opposing sides within the story. I think it's very fascinating. And also, Medusa talks to Percy. Medusa says that her and Sally are kind of like sisters. And it's true, Medusa and Sally do have something in common. They both know what it's like to fall for Poseidon. And once again, that brings us back to the first episode in that flashback with Sally and Percy, where they're looking at the Perseus statue and he's holding Medusa's head. And baby Percy calls Medusa a monster. And Sally's like, what makes you think that she's a monster? Sally's sort of empathy for Medusa comes full circle when Percy meets Medusa in episode 3. But what makes it interesting is Medusa is talking about Poseidon, and of course she hates Poseidon. If you go and read a lot about Medusa's story, there's the whole notion of like, after everything that happened, Poseidon, when he seduced Medusa, there's a whole commentary and conversation to be had around the fact that Athena decided to punish Medusa for what happened instead of punishing Poseidon. It's a very, very interesting story, and if any of this interests you, I definitely recommend going and reading about it. It's a lot, and there's lots of different stories depending on what you read, but it is very, very fascinating. And I love that the show got into it. They don't really get into Medusa's story in the book. You're kind of just, oh, yep, Medusa's a villain, we gotta kill Medusa. Not in the show. The show makes it a little bit more interesting. The show gives us, the audience, the choice between, is Medusa a monster? Is she not a monster and just misunderstood? What do we want to decide? And I like that it gives us that option. But back to the show. It's really interesting. Medusa is talking about Poseidon, but she hates Poseidon because, it's Poseidon's fault that she's been cursed. It's Poseidon's fault that all this happened to her. Poseidon's the one that decided to come into Athena's temple and seduce Medusa, etc., etc. So when Medusa talks about him, she's like, me and your mom, we have so much in common. We both know what it's like to be attacked by a monster. And Percy's like, a monster? My mom never talked about Poseidon like that. So it's interesting. You've got these two characters that know what it's like to fall for Poseidon. One views Poseidon in a positive way. Sally only ever talked about Poseidon in a positive way when she talked to Percy about his dad. She calls him kind, she calls him strong, noble, all these really nice things. And then you have someone like Medusa who also fell for Poseidon, but it's all negative things. He's a monster. He's a horrible person. And that, again, lends a hand into like the sort of overarching concept of the show of, are the gods good or are the gods bad? Do we blindly trust the gods or should we question the gods? And that's going to play into Luke's betrayal. That's going to play into so many seasons in the future. The fact that that conversation's already being set up, those seeds are being planted, not just in the show, but in the audience's head of, oh, are the gods good or bad? Are they both? Are they neither? What's up? It's just a really fascinating conversation. And I haven't stopped thinking about the Medusa scene since I watched it. I haven't stopped thinking about it because not only is it such an interesting concept and they do such a great job of portraying how confusing and intriguing Medusa's story is, but also Jessica Parker Kennedy is just so fantastic as Medusa. Like, she is the standout of episode 3 for me. She is absolutely incredible. Like, I somehow feel extremely bad for Medusa, but I'm also really terrified of her. So which one is it? But then, Medusa goes into her kitchen, Percy follows her, and we see sort of maybe the more evil side of Medusa. She offers to help Percy get his mom back if Percy hands over Grover and Annabeth or something like that. And obviously Percy doesn't do that, because why would he ever? So the trio runs away from her. She's like chasing them. They're down in like her little basement with all of her statues and stuff. And they fight Medusa. The Medusa fight scene happens. And it's changed a little bit from how they kill her in the book. But again, I think it's changed for the better. I think in the book what they do is they like sneak up behind her and throw like a black bag around her head or whatever so she can't turn them to stone, and Percy cuts her head off. But in the show, Annabeth sneaks up behind her and puts her hat on Medusa's head. So Medusa turns invisible so she can't make eye contact with anybody because nobody can see her. And Percy blindly just goes... and all you hear is the thud of her head and then her body hitting the floor. You see Percy, pick up the head, but he's not really holding anything. And I think them changing it is a combination of two things. Number one, I do think using Annabeth's hat to make Medusa's head invisible is partially a Disney thing. You can't have too much blood and like gory stuff in a Disney Plus show, especially if it's a show like Percy Jackson, which is technically books targeted at a children audience. Like if you go to the bookstore, Percy Jackson books are in the children's section. Like that is the target audience, even though we as adults still enjoy the show. You can't have too much blood like that when it comes to literally decapitating somebody. So I understand that that's probably part of the reason why they changed how they kill Medusa. But also, I just think it's cooler. It's a great use of Annabeth's hat. It's cool seeing Percy like take the hat off and using Medusa's head on Alecto. That's really cool. I also don't think it's a stretch to compliment the way that they kill Medusa in the movie. You guys know, I'm always talking about how bad the movie is, all right? That's not a secret. We all know the movies are bad, but there are a few things that came out of the movie where even though they weren't book accurate, they were still a little iconic to the movie itself. For example, the Lotus Casino scene in the movie, I think it plays like Poker Face by Lady Gaga, which a little iconic, okay? And also I'd say probably the most iconic thing that came out of the movies was the way that Percy killed Medusa. He killed her using the back of an iPod Touch. Pretty cool idea, if it wasn't inaccurate to the fact that demigods don't have electronics. So in a way, it kind of feels like when making the show, they're like, yeah, we know that common folk liked the way that Percy killed Medusa in the movie. So what we gotta do is we gotta take the way that we kill Medusa and we gotta one-up them. And I think they did. I really liked the way they killed Medusa. I thought it was super cool. Really cool concept. Big fan of it. After they kill Medusa, we find Grover looking at his Uncle Ferdinand turned to stone, and it's very, very sad. Then Percy and Annabeth start arguing again, and Grover's just absolutely fed up with it at this point. Like, he doesn't even try to resolve their arguing without hurting feelings. He's like, guys, can you just stop? Percy then spills the beans on his prophecy about how the prophecy said that he will be betrayed by somebody he calls friend. And the reason that he picked Annabeth and Grover for this quest is because he doesn't picture a world where him and Annabeth can be friends. And he was pretty confident that if anybody was ever going to be on his side, it would be Grover. So that's why he's upset if, like, when Grover is taking Annabeth's side on certain arguments. And then when Percy says that about Annabeth, like, that visibly hurts her feelings. And he's like, I didn't mean it like that. But that's how it came out. It's a very good scene. Lots of tension and emotion. And Grover does a really good job at mediating it. He's like, listen, you guys didn't choose to be demigods. We didn't choose this quest. But what we can choose, what we can decide is, as long as the three of us are together, we're not going to be alone. We're going to have each other's backs. And that kind of like solves, I guess, their biggest issue. Then we get to the scene of Percy wanting to ship off Medusa's head to Mount Olympus. It's really funny watching Annabeth and Grover be like, no. Bad idea. Really bad idea. I love how Percy's like, why can't I? And Annabeth's like, the gods will see it as us being impertinent. And Percy's like, I am impertinent. I love Percy Jackson. Like, he's just so funny. And so Annabeth and Grover are trying to disagree with Percy, and Percy spins Grover's song right back around on him. He starts clapping, and he starts singing Consensus. Super funny. At this point, now the trio feels like a trio. It feels like they've moved on from their issues, and now they're in it together. But that is not the end of the episode, you guys. I can't believe I didn't think about this when it came to Hermes being in the show. We have seen photos of Hermes in the Lotus Casino scene. We know that he's going to be in the Lotus Casino. But Rick has said countless times that Hermes being in the show will make sense in the context of the show when you see it. I'm so stupid. I didn't think about the fact that Hermes, messenger of the gods, delivers Medusa's head to Mount Olympus. How did I not think about that? The simplest thing. So they ship Medusa's head off using Hermes Express. We see the box being held by somebody walking down the street. And again, I'm going to plug my episode reaction. See my reaction to Lin-Manuel Miranda showing up in the show for the first time. He gets in the elevator. He twists the key, hits the 600th floor. It starts to pan up from the box to his head. And it's Lin-Manuel Miranda. And of course, the first thing he does is sing. He's just humming along to the elevator music. But of course, the first thing that Lin-Manuel Miranda does as Hermes is sing. Of course. He gets out of the elevator. And we just hear him say, "You guys are never going to believe this." And that's the end of the episode. So you're telling me I got Medusa and Hermes on my birthday? Yeah. Best episode of the show so far. It's fine. Casual. But that is the end of the episode. Guys, the show just keeps getting better. And that's such a good thing. Like the fact that it just keeps getting better. I couldn't ask for anything more. I've said this before and I'm going to say it again. I cannot stress enough how it feels like everything that's added to the show or anything that's changed from the books is done so intentionally and it's done for the better. Like I haven't witnessed a change from the book to the show yet that doesn't feel like it's a decision that was made for the better, which is such an important thing because I know how much we all want this show to be extremely book accurate, and it pretty much is, but anything that's not book accurate, it's not an issue because it's beneficial to the show, which I think is fantastic. I'm really happy that episode 3 is out now so that I can actually talk about it. I got to watch episode 3 like 2 weeks ago and I haven't been able to talk about it until now. And I'm so very happy that I can finally talk about episode 3 because I haven't stopped thinking about it since I watched it. I got to see the first 4 episodes early, but I think episode 3 has been my favorite so far. Just because, honestly, the whole Medusa scene is done so spectacularly in my opinion. I just love it. I love the direction they took of is Medusa actually a monster or is that just what we've been told? I just can't stop thinking about it. It's just done so well. And I love it. I really do. Let me know down in the comments what you guys thought of the episode. I'm really excited to hear y'all's thoughts. I can't believe we got to see Hermes so early in the show. I was shocked. I was gagged. And I'm very excited to see him again. I'm really interested to see how they utilize him. I'm interested to see what he's gonna do when it comes to the Lotus Casino because the whole concept of it is that you go into the casino and you end up just staying there for forever. Like it traps people in there and time doesn't move. You don't grow old in there and it's hard to leave. But if Hermes is clearly leaving and doing his job, delivering mail and whatnot, he's like, I guess, immune to the Lotus Casino. He comes and goes. Maybe he's in charge of the casino. Who's to say? I don't know. If we find out that Hermes is in charge of the casino or if he has a hand in trapping people there, that's a win for Luke defenders. I'm sorry. People who defend Luke, I don't know if I'm a Luke defender or not. I'm very middle ground, I think, on the whole situation. But Luke defenders are probably having the time of their lives when it comes to this show. Luke in episode 2 is so nice to Percy, and they're setting up the whole like mentor relationship between the two of them really well. Like I said already, they're setting up the relationship between Luke and Annabeth really well also. So if they're making Luke look good right now, and they end up making Hermes the absolute worst deadbeat father of any god ever, which he already kind of is in the books. All the gods are sort of deadbeat parents, but Hermes really does suck. But if they make Hermes even worse by having him be involved with trapping people in the Lotus Casino, Luke defenders, you go ahead and do your thing. You go ahead and do your thing, because why does Hermes suck? Why is Hermes the worst? But yeah, I can't wait to see what happens when we get to that scene. I can't wait to see how Hermes is used in that episode and how he's used in the rest of the show. It's very exciting stuff. But yeah, make sure you let me know what you guys thought of the episode. Like this video. If this is your first time here, make sure you subscribe. I post a lot of Percy Jackson content. You can watch my breakdown of last week's episodes. You can watch my reactions to the episodes. Make sure you follow me on all my other social medias because I talk about Percy Jackson a lot over there, specifically on Twitter. You can also watch my reactions to the episodes on TikTok and probably Instagram. Yeah. But yeah, make sure you follow all of those. But that does it for the breakdown of episode 3. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you all next time. Bye.